Invest 92L has formed in the Atlantic. I've got the first model tracks to show you, and if there's any potential impacts to our area. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi, my friends. Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We are your home for Caribbean weather. Hey, it's great to see you on this Monday. I hope you're doing well. Coming up in the video, Invest 92L has developed in the Atlantic. We've got the first tracks and models to look over, get you guys prepared for that. Another very active weather day across our area, and we'll have your island-by-island rainfall forecast as well. Let's get started, my friends. Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the leading law firm of Central Florida. They're your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. You get storm damage of any kind, wind, hail, hurricane, etc. They'll walk you through that insurance claim process. They offer free consultation and policy reviews. It's leanonmelaw.com for more information. And as always, love to hear from you. In that comment section below, it's been happening in your area, what the weather has been like. You have a question as we move through the video, feel free to drop it in the comments section below as well. All right, our wave we've been watching for almost a week coming off the West African coast and now the Central Atlantic Basin has now been designated Invest 92L. Now this is the precursor to this becoming a depression or a tropical storm. Invest is short for investigation, and it's an area the Hurricane Center feels is likely to develop. And the only thing that's been kind of holding this back so far has been a little bit of dry air and wind shear, which for this time of the year in the Atlantic Basin is pretty unusual, but the system is beginning to consolidate or shrink around that broad center. We're getting deeper convection, and I think in very short order we're likely going to get a tropical depression and then ultimately a tropical storm. This is our high resolution visible satellite imagery. Of course, you need the daylight to have your visible satellite imagery, so as we go deeper into this Monday afternoon we lose some of that, but you can clearly see at the end, you see these shadows, those are higher cloud tops. We're really getting some strong convection on the northern and the northeast side of the storm. We're getting better concentric outflow as well. You can kind of see that. You see those wispy clouds kind of fading off right now. That's good outflow from that center that's beginning to form up a little bit more. Only thing that it's still fighting is when I show you the water vapor imagery, there is still drier air being ingested into the southwest side of the storm. So that is still an issue, but it's beginning to overcome that. And again, all signs point to now more rapid development with this system, and the Hurricane Center ultimately has it as a 90% chance, but it's already in this red area. So at any point in time later today, or especially on Tuesday, we're likely to get a tropical depression, if not even tropical storm Gabrielle. Now, because they have named this an Invest, we now have our first tropical models beginning to run on this. So let me show you those. Those are the spaghetti plots, right? Again, your red area is kind of a first blush track, but really what it is from the Hurricane Center is where they do believe that this storm could ultimately develop. It's as far west as the Leeward Islands or as far northeast as about 500 to 600 miles away. So any point in time within this red area, we could get development, but it's likely going to occur somewhere around here. Then we look at our spaghetti tracks, our tropical model plots here, and again, they're all fairly within this red area. Pretty decent agreement, nothing really honed in on as of yet because we don't have that low level center. But what I want to note is outside of one rogue tropical model, everything is north and east of the Lesser Antilles and the Leeward Islands for development and movement, and has that recurve to the north and to the east. So decent likelihood right now that this ultimately stays a fish storm and at least doesn't get into the Caribbean. Now, you do notice that the Hurricane Center has this a little bit more of a west push north of the Leeward Islands and the Lesser Antilles and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. We'll talk more about that coming up. But in the shorter term, as this begins to wrap up and becomes Gabrielle, we're still looking at a northern latitude gain before the Eastern Caribbean, hopefully ultimately staying away from the Lesser Antilles and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. But I do expect this storm to, get a little bit stronger in a hurry. It might take a little bit of time for it to finally wrap up, but once it does, there is less wind shear and there is less drier air to impact this storm, and most of the models have this becoming a hurricane, all right? And some of the models even have this becoming a major hurricane. This is your infrared imagery and your visible satellite imagery on one plot here. So just to kind of show you all of that in one fell swoop. Let's get into the models. I'm going to start off with the GFS model here. We'll look at the European model. We'll look at the Icon model, all those kind of good bells and whistles for you guys. So I'm going to loop this up for the next week. All right. So we're just going to go out 7 days. Again, it might take a couple of days for it to really begin to ramp up, but as it does so, it is likely to become a hurricane, and you can clearly see that on the GFS model. Now, the GFS model is fairly far north and east in our Ensemble suites of models, right? When we're looking at all the different, global models, and now we're beginning to see some of the tropical models beginning to run in it as well. But it's great to see that buffer away from the islands, and that's ultimately what we want to continue to see as these models begin to run. As I have mentioned many times, we really have to keep an eye on what these models do with run-to-run consistency before we have a true low-level center, before we have a tropical depression or a tropical storm, because the models can have a lot of error built in, as they're trying to pick up on exactly what this happens. But ultimately, there are environmental conditions ahead of this storm that should nudge this storm farther north as it tries to track off towards the west. So again, potentially not a Caribbean storm. We'll have to watch out for Bermuda. There is still obviously some wiggle room with this, but my feeling is that the highest likelihood right now is that we do get a recurve before it gets into the Eastern Caribbean. This is going to be your surface-based winds on the GFS model as well. Same time frame, going to loop this up, and you'll see that. Take just 1 second to fully start the loop up here, but it'll pop on, I promise you. So here it comes. Again, as we get into tomorrow, you can see the brighter whites, especially into Wednesday and Thursday. And then we really start to see a nice center towards the end of the week, which ultimately becomes a hurricane. And on the latest run of the GFS deterministic is east of Bermuda. This would be another perfect system, kind of like Aaron. Aaron went in between the goalposts of North Carolina and Bermuda. If this one recurves east of Bermuda, you have a true fish storm out there, even if it does become a major hurricane. Now it's going to elevate some sea conditions, and we can talk about that. Ultimately, it might bring some rain to some areas that could use some rain, depending on its final track, but we want to keep this storm obviously away from any landmass. I do want to note before we get into the other models, and I mentioned this in yesterday's video here, if I take this back, we do have a non-tropical low that is beginning to develop off the North Carolina coastline. It's going to bring some fresh winds and some really rough surf conditions to the Carolinas and the Delmarva Peninsula, but it should spin back inland enough where ultimately, even as it pushes back offshore, it's not expected to become a tropical system. I'll obviously monitor it this time of the year, but the Hurricane Center is not highlighting that. And again, to reiterate the fact that 92L is the only system that we're looking at for potential development. We don't have any other areas of development, or we don't have any other active storms for mid-September. That's very quiet for this time of the year. So that's what it looks like on the GFS model. When we look at again, that was deterministic. When we look at the ensemble members of all the GFS runs, again, you're going to see the ensemble mean, the control, the deterministic. This is the deterministic, the one that I just showed you, pulling away. Now look, the average of the GFS models is farther south and west, closer to the islands, but a few 100-mile buffer. Any of the lines that you see getting closer to places like Antigua, Barbuda, and Anguilla, and the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, and down the road Turks and Caicos, they're all in that gray to green. And if you look at that, your pressures are going to be very weak to tropical depression. A weaker storm will likely get pushed farther south and west, even though environmental conditions will be raising it north. So stronger storms, faster recurve, weaker storms potentially closer to the islands, but not as much in the way of major impacts. But there still is a variety of strengths within these models as well. This is the European ensemble members. Same time frame. Again, here's your development. Wednesday, Thursday, ultimately becoming a hurricane as we get into early on Saturday. That could happen as early as Friday. But again, you have several 100-mile buffer between the European ensemble member, where it has Gabrielle, and the northern side of the Lesser Antilles. Again, great news there. What does it look like on the AI version of the European model? It's about the same scenario. They're kind of in lockstep with each other right now. This one if you were to take the average, is even a little bit farther north and east than the European ensemble. So the AI is even a little bit farther away. Again, ultimately trying to wrap this up, become a hurricane, but the recurve before it gets into the Eastern Caribbean. When we look at the overall ensemble tracks of the European model, if we were to take the average, this is even north and east of the GFS average ensembles as well, with again a good buffer, a good breath away. Sure, there are a few that are farther west which will ultimately need to be watched, but you can clearly see the turn north and northeast. Here's Bermuda. That of course is one area we always have to watch out for how quickly these storms want to try and recurve based on this. Icon model, it's a little bit different scenario, okay? It is closer to the islands, but just like I showed you on the GFS, if it does get closer to the islands, it's forecast to be a weaker storm. So as we get into Sunday and Monday, first of all, the icon is slower, but you notice that pressure just got covered up right around 1,002 millibars. You know, that is weak tropical storm kind of status here, right? Still north of the islands, it's just a little bit closer. Now, ultimately, if something like the icon model were to play out and it gets a little bit closer to the islands, as it begins to move to the west, you get the southerly flow and you might end up getting some very heavy rain in the Eastern Caribbean. Out of that, for some areas, that's beneficial rain. For others who have had a lot of rain, we might have to concern ourselves with some flooding issues. So, you know, the icon model is kind of lingering with the weaker western ones of the GFS and bringing a weaker system closer to our islands. And then, you know, ultimately, again, down the road from here, does it continue west? Does it begin that recurve just a little bit later than what the GFS and the European model has? Friends, everything I see right now looks pretty good to me, right? Even though it's likely to become a strong storm, that recurve before our area is the likely scenario at this point in time, but it's not definitive. So we have to really monitor the situation very closely because ultimately this will likely become a hurricane. So when we look at all of the, again, these are all fresh first run from our tropical models here beginning to fire up on 92L. They begin to build it into a hurricane. Now it's going to take some time, right? But beyond this, you know, 168 hours, most of them get it into potential major hurricane strength. But again, you saw that that was happening as it moved east of Bermuda on the GFS. Gabrielle, next named storm, seventh named storm, right? Has been a very active season so far as the number of storms. And at this point in time, at least through this week, that looks to be the only area that could potentially become a named storm. Friends, if you want to continue to follow the tropical updates here and you want your latest daily forecasts across the Caribbean and the Bahamas, I encourage you to join the fantastic community at Meteo Mundo. Thanks for taking a quick second, hitting that like button, subscribing to the channel. Again, my initiative is for you to share this with one person that you know, this channel. Hit that share button, let them know about the channel. Even if they watch other YouTube weather content, maybe they'll get something out of this channel that they like, that they appreciate, and they want to become a frequent viewer just like you guys are as well. So now we're going to get into what's happening in our area locally, and we're going to get into the next few days in your island by island rainfall forecast. I want to start off with the weather hazards that I'm noting for this Monday. The Dominican Republic, Haiti, Costa Rica, Panama, all with some flood advisories or some flood warnings. I mean, obviously it depends on the exact area, but there are flooding concerns in those countries today. Jamaica has your strong wind and large wave advisory for the coastal offshore waters, the offshore waters of the South Coast. And Trinidad and Tobago has an adverse weather alert, yellow level number 2, for some excessive rainfall. It has been such an active period here. We still have a ton of tropical moisture that is moving throughout the area, and that is regardless of whatever 92L wants to bring into the region. So let's get started. I'm going to zoom into places like Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands to begin this kind of around the world view here. We'll start off with more thunderstorms developing. I mentioned this in yesterday's video, that rain and storms were becoming more prolific across the area for the next couple of days. We'll have a fresh breeze. It's not the worst thing in the world because obviously it tries to temper some of the heat, because when we haven't had the rain and storms, we've had heat advisories. Look at the temperature there in Aguadilla going down from around 90 degrees earlier today back into the 70s as the heavy rain has moved through. These are your temperatures right now in Fahrenheit. Winds in miles per hour, very solid winds today. St. Croix, St. Thomas, Fajardo, San Juan, Ponce, Aguadilla, 30 plus mile an hour winds from time to time. It's been a fresh breeze across the Virgin Islands as well. We have ability here to show you guys the live radar. So let's take a live look out of San Juan. And again, it's all scattered rain at this point in time. There's nothing very concentrated, but pockets of moisture with just a little bit better quality have been moving into the area here. So I'm still expecting some scattered, fast moving showers. It could bring some locally heavy downpours from time to time. That's not going to be extremely widespread. It's just a good breeze and some fast moving showers to roll across this area. Of course, we have live cameras here at Meteo Mundo. I really appreciate our friends at the Soggy Dollar Bar allowing us to show you their view from Jost Van Dyke in the British Virgin Islands. And this really tells the story. From time to time, we've had a passing shower, but one thing that's been very consistent in this part of our area today has been that fresh breeze out of the east, which has been 25, 30 plus miles an hour for the majority of this Monday. You want to even get some stronger winds. Look at St. Bart's today. 40-mile-an-hour wind. St. Martin, about a 35-mile-an-hour breeze. Antigua, right around 30 as well. And we're beginning to build up some showers and a few rumbles of thunder in this area as well. This is what it looks like on the visible satellite imagery. If you guys see again earlier in the day, those brighter white cloud tops, those are the showers coming through. And as they've rolled across these islands, they produced, again, winds of nearly 40 miles an hour. So it's been an active day. If you guys live in these areas, let me know in the comment section below if you've seen some of these passing showers. They've actually been even a little bit more concentrated down towards Guadalupe for today. You can see that blow up there, the higher cloud tops. And we're beginning to see some of the moisture eke a little bit farther south. Now, the northern half of the Lesser Antilles will have more impactful weather from this tropical disturbance coming through, which again has nothing to do with 92L, just tropical moisture this time of the year. Farther south, it's going to be a little bit more isolated in nature. We've had some heavier rain down in Trinidad, but from the Dominica area, Martinique, St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Grenada, it's been a quieter Monday. Oh, we just lost our camera here at St. Lucia. Sorry about that. I can tell you that it was mostly sunny about 15 minutes ago when I checked the camera, so we'll move on. But a beautiful day in St. Lucia. But again, one area that has had some excessive rainfall, right over Trinidad. Even Tobago hasn't had nearly as much rain as Trinidad has had for today. And again, it's an adverse alert, yellow number 2 for some of that excessive rainfall, some urban flooding, some small stream flooding in a couple of spots. Nueva Esparta looking pretty good so far for today. Another sun-splashed afternoon with some breezy conditions across the ABC Islands for you right now. You saw Oranjestad with a 30-mile-an-hour breeze, Willemstad about a 25-mile-an-hour wind. And that's the live look outside to Oranjestad in the Eagle Beach area. Again, fresh breeze, but I feel like a lot of this is just all about how lovely the weather has been here in Aruba. Now, it's been too dry. Our friends in the ABC Islands could use some more rain, but at this point in time, we'll take the sunshine and the breezy conditions. Quick sip of water, we'll move on. All right, let's talk about another area that is going to continue to stay very active here, and that's going to be everywhere from Puerto Rico off towards the west. So we'll go back into the Dominican Republic and Haiti. As I've already mentioned, there are some flood warnings, flood advisories, just very area dependent, especially in interior western sides of the Dominican Republic, where we've had some excessive rainfall the last couple of days. At this point in time, the rain has been, fairly scattered in nature. I'll bring back on the lightning data here, and you guys can see that there are some lightning strikes with this. There's a bit of instability here. So we're not just getting some showers. There's some decent rumbles of thunder rolling its way through that's producing some of the local heavier rainfall. Look at all of the rain off of Aguadilla, across the Mota Passage, headed towards Punta Cana, La Romana. And again, this will all work its way off towards the west. We've seen numerous thunderstorms again develop today across portions of Cuba. When we get to the western sides of the Caribbean, you can clearly see there's a flow of moisture coming in from southwest to northeast, right over Cuba, the Straits of Florida, and into the Bahamas. And I'll highlight that coming up in just a second. But more locally here, thunderstorms are beginning to break out again at the hour across Jamaica. And today is one of those days where we've had some storms out west, we've had some storms in central parishes, and we've actually had a few storms in the last couple of frames, even towards the eastern parishes. Yes, Portland, St. Thomas parishes getting some thunderstorm activity this afternoon. It's scattered in nature. Not everyone is going to get it, but we've had more widespread activity on this Monday than what we've seen lately, which is great news for some spots that have been more persistently dry in Jamaica, especially the south central and the southeast sides of the island. So if you guys live at Old Harbor or Kingston or Morant Bay, let me know in the comment section below. love to hear from all my friends in Jamaica. Doesn't matter where you're viewing from, but if you've had some rain and you got some of that today, let me know. We've had a couple of passing showers of the Cayman Islands for today, redeveloping thunderstorms. So there's your showers over Little Cayman and Cayman Brac, a few more storms to come. Now, this is all building in. And places like the Cayman Islands will ultimately have pretty good rain chances the next couple of days. And this is all connected to that monsoon trough back down in Costa Rica and Panama, where the thunderstorm activity continues to be prolific. And all of this just continues to build to the north and kind of gets stretched out a little bit as well. When I show you the visible satellite imagery, you'll see some of that twist. Again, not expecting this to be tropical, but mid-September, we have high atmospheric moisture content. We have some lift in the atmosphere with our tropical waves coming through and just a lot of embedded energy. And so this is when we get the prolific thunderstorms outside of any, tropical depression, tropical storms. And we're seeing that again for today. Thunderstorms are becoming very efficiently developed over the Bay Islands, La Ceiba, San Pedro Sula, the northern sides of Honduras. It's been another wet day for places like Belize City, San Pedro, right along the eastern extent of Quintana Roo, from the Chetumal area all the way up towards Tulum, Cancun, and Cozumel. A little bit drier today, Merida and Campeche. And again, we'll just follow this moisture plume in this stream all the way back into the northern Bahamas, where again, we still have, let me bring on this front here, we still have this boundary which is situated over the northern and northwest Bahamas, continuing to drive in moisture, passing showers and a few rumbles of thunder. Let's take a live look to the radar here out of the Miami, Florida area, and I'll drop off the satellite data. You can clearly see it's not nearly as widespread, but this boundary is still a focal mechanism for a few storms for today. We've had more storms over New Providence and Andros, portions of the northern sides of Eleuthera, the Abacos, a couple of isolated showers and a rumble of thunder over Grand Bahama. Live look outside of central Eleuthera. You can see some of the passing higher cloud tops and the storms that have rolled through portions of the Eleutheras for today. But again, still fairly dry hours and locations, even into the northern Bahamas. Central Bahamas are even a little bit quieter for today. Back into Turks and Caicos, where we're beginning to get a few thunderstorms developing there. Again, it's more isolated in nature, but we're getting some of that ramping up. Now, before we move on to the island by island forecast, look, this boundary, again, non-tropical low, Carolinas, a lot of moisture over Bermuda. We still kind of have this inherently broad spin, and it's, again, non-tropical in nature, but it is focusing mechanisms for additional storms and energy, and this is part of the reason why it's been pretty active over the greater Antilles here the last couple of days. Some of that moisture is feeding into this area along with a strong easterly, so you have that convergence of winds, and from time to time, you get some pretty active weather there. All right, so let's go back out to the broad view, and we'll get into the model here just over the next couple of days. And we'll look at your island by island rainfall forecast as well. Again, as always, you guys have a specific question, feel free to drop it in the comment section below as well. So as we wait for whatever 92L and how close it's going to approach our area, please note that rain chances in a lot of areas will stay elevated, right? Again, you're going to see a lot of rain coming into the Leeward Islands and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and Haiti, especially from the St. Lucia, but Martinique area, Dominica, it's kind of the southern extent where I think we're going to have the highest rain totals. But Guadeloupe, Montserrat, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Bart, St. Martin, Anguilla, wet, wet, wet the next couple of days. 70, 80% chance for showers. Some locally heavy rainfall, fast moving showers though. Again, some spots could get 1/10 of an inch of rain or a few millimeters of rain, and other areas could get 1 to 2 inches of rain in a day, or 25 to 50 millimeters. It is going to be dependent, but it is a wet forecast overall. Same situation for Anegada and Road Town Tortola and Yost Van Dyke, St. Croix and St. Thomas and St. John and Vieques and Culebra and all of Puerto Rico. Showers will be widespread, a few embedded thunderstorms, some locally heavy rainfall, and just a wet forecast at least through Wednesday, but a lot of Thursday is going to be pretty darn wet as well. Passing showers will become more elevated with additional flooding concerns for the Dominican Republic and Haiti. And this all just spreads off towards the west, friends. And by the time you get into Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, these are areas that are already wet, right? So we just continue with high rain chances through so many areas. It'll be a little bit spottier overall in the Bahamas, but still there's going to be some decent rain chances each afternoon the next several days. Cuba's rain chances are going to be exceptionally high. It's nice to see more rain coming back into Jamaica as well. Waves of showers with a few embedded storms. The strong wind and large wave advisory is likely to continue for the offshore southern waters, including Pedro and Morant Bank. So keep an eye out that for my fishermen and my mariner friends there in Jamaica. And again, elevated surf and sea conditions are likely in several spots. I'll monitor that for you guys, but small craft advisories being hoisted from time to time, not out of the question. Look at all of the rain for Central America, the Yucatan, from Panama, Costa Rica, all that spinning in to Nicaragua and Honduras and Belize and Guatemala, Cancun and Cozumel. So just a wet, active period here with waves of showers and storms. It's funny, the only area that might actually dry out a little bit is going to be Bermuda over the next couple of days. I'll have some rain for tomorrow and a little bit drier on Wednesday and Thursday. So it's an active pattern. This is what it looks like for you guys, island by island. Northwest Bahamas, 50% chance for showers and a few storms through Wednesday, and even up to a 60% chance on Thursday. It is going to be more scattered in nature, central and southeast Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, but the chance is going to be there. Cuba's rain chances are exceptionally high. Locally heavy downpours there. How about my friends in the Cayman Islands tomorrow? 60% chance for showers and a few storms. Slightly lower Wednesday, back up to a 50 on Thursday. Belize City, 70% chance tomorrow. Locally heavy rainfall, 60 Wednesday, 50 on Thursday. 50 to a 60% chance the next 3 days in the Cancun Cozumel area. Jamaica's rain chance is about the same. 60 tomorrow, Wednesday, 50 on Thursday. These are all high, all real high. It even builds. The DR, 80% on Wednesday. Puerto Rico, a 70% chance on Wednesday. 70 to an 80% chance for rain each day through Thursday in the Virgin Islands. Bermuda's rain chance is high tomorrow, then gets cut off Wednesday, Thursday, but that's about the only spot, guys. Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, 80% of chance of rain tomorrow, 70 Wednesday, 50 Anguilla Thursday, 60 St. Kitts and Nevis on Thursday. And it's about the same scenario again, all the way south towards Dominica. 70 to an 80% chance for rain tomorrow. Slightly drier, but still elevated rain chances Wednesday. And still a 50% chance on Thursday. Martinique south, it tails off a bit. But look, Martinique is going to be wet the next couple of days too. Even St. Lucia with a 50% chance tomorrow. Then it does fall, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Barbados, and Grenada. There's still going to be some moisture and some showers. They're just not going to be as widespread or as prominent as areas up to the north. It is ultimately drying out a bit in these areas Wednesday, Thursday. Grenada, TNT, 30 to a 40% chance most days. Suriname and Guyana with a decent chance for some rain. Going to be relatively dry. I expect a few showers in Nueva Esparta, but not much. And this is probably the driest spot. I hate to say it again. My God, the ABC Islands just can't really buy a lot of rain here lately. Hopefully we'll get some better chances, but all of that moisture that I've talked about, it's all going north of that area. Now, obviously, again, surf and sea conditions will be something I'll closely monitor as this begins to develop and ramp up. It will more than likely bring some long period swells to the Eastern Caribbean, the northern sides of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, even Hispaniola, and the eastern sides of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. So we'll have to watch for those elevated surf and sea conditions. Locally, we could see some elevated surf and sea conditions in the western side of the Caribbean, again, outside of any tropical development. The fresh easterlies here and all that moisture should provide some of that. Speaking of moisture, rainfall totals are going to be exceptionally high in most spots. We'll start off west, where again, you're going to see a lot of red on this map, 2, 3, 4, up to 6+ inches of rain, 50, 100, maybe even 150 millimeters. Out east, again, we'll see the track of 92L begin to enter the picture. But before that, locally heavy rainfall. Again, the Dominican Republic and Haiti and Puerto Rico and the Leeward Islands. So before 92L comes in, watch those rain totals hit 3, 4+ inches of rain. And then there's 92L. Again, ultimately, even on the European model, it drives up north of our area. Friends, I appreciate you guys. Follow us across all of our social media platforms. We're on Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook. You want to send me a picture or video? The easiest way to do that is myMediaMundo@gmail.com. I'll promise I'll get the feature where I can take myself off camera fixed. Should have that by tomorrow. Please remember that Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the leading law firm of Central Florida. They're your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. It is storm season and a storm moves into your area. They can walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. Go to leanonmelaw.com if you would like more information. Again, question about the forecast, drop it in the comment section below. As we leave, thanks for taking a quick second supporting the channel by hitting the like button and subscribing. You guys have a great rest of your day. You know I'm monitoring the situation for you, and I'll have the latest tomorrow right here at Meteo Mundo.